All right, Darlie, thank you so much for that wonderful session. So now that everyone's had a chance to write down some of their feedback and you've had a chance to self-reflect a little bit, we're going to start with the feedback round of the session. So I'll ask you to just begin by going through your sheet, naming one thing you thought went really well, something you want to continue to improve on, and how you think the overall level of interactivity was.
Okay, it's hard to pick one thing. I mean, I did practice and prepare for this, and it's interesting, no matter how much you prepare, it never goes how you think it's going to go. So I didn't anticipate the activity taking as long as it did. I'm glad we did it and everyone contributed to it, but I thought I was going to be at a different spot, or that this concept map would be developed a little further, and that we'd get a chance to do that. But I'm not sure that's something I would change, because it very much depended on how people responded to me, how things went. So I think that's just part of the experience. I got a little nervous. I think I switched my questions around at the beginning, and that sort of, I don't know, I lost my spot for a moment or two, but I think I did a good job bringing it back. Interactivity-wise, I thought that part went really well, better than I had expected, actually, that everyone was participating and responding and actually answered my questions. I always fear that I'll ask something and you'll get that drop-dead silence thing you get in a class. Yeah.
Awesome job, Darlie. I really liked your lesson, and I thought you did a great job of incorporating us and engaging us in the lesson. And one of the ways you did that was you taught very close to the table. And so, we were automatically engaged just because you weren't far away at the board. You were right close with us, and you were smiling, and it just really engaged us. I did have a hard time coming up with a suggestion for improvement, but one thing I thought, and I do it too, is filler words. And so just trying to think about how you can plan your transitions so that you don't use those filler words in between.
Can you give me an example?
What a filler word is?
Or what is something I might have done?
Right, okay. So I did notice you said and ah, and usually it was when you were thinking. So you're trying to think of, okay, what was next? So just trying to plan those transitions so that you don't fill the space with sound.
Great, that was a great suggestion.
So great job. I really, really enjoyed this teaching method, and I really felt really engaged. One thing that I really, really liked about your, I guess your presentation was that you had recapped everything at the end. You kind of really quickly summarized everything at the end. You also reiterated what the teaching methods were, because sometimes as we're progressing through I guess a lesson, I forget halfway through what we're actually supposed to learn. So that was really great, and I really appreciated that. One thing I would recommend for improvement would be to make the words on your concept map a little bit bigger. I'm wearing glasses, so I'm already kind of visually impaired, that I personally would appreciate it if you could make the words on the concept map a little bit bigger. For instance, with your universe concept map, you had all the words along the side on the right side, and you had sort of an empty space underneath that, the beginnings of what you hope to fill in the universe with, or the concept map with. So it would be great if you could rearrange certain things to just make it a little bit bigger. And it will also just be helpful if you someone was sitting further at the back of the class. And I guess in terms of concept maps and examples, if you could give more examples aside from sciencey ones, I think other people from other disciplines would kind of appreciate that. Just because I was just oh, that's great, that's biology, but I think it would be really beneficial if other people in engineering or arts can also see how they could apply that to their own discipline. But yeah, thank you.
So thank you so much for a wonderful lesson. Very, very enjoyable, and I think a really good example of how to teach the teaching method, because the content that you chose wasn't the focus. It was how to actually use this. And obviously when we had the example on the whiteboard where we all got up and did it, you got the application down so that we know what it's going to look like, or at least one example of what it's going to look like. And then I also really appreciated that you went through some of the benefits. I don't think there was time to go over some of the cons, but there probably aren't that many cons in the first place. Um, I think that your presentation style overall is really great. I appreciate that you speak at a really, I would say, um, moderate pace, so not too slow, not too fast, excellent volume. Everyone would be able to hear you even in a large class, I think. And your use of the room, the movement and gestures that you make, add some animation to your teaching style that people will really appreciate. So it comes across that you really enjoy teaching. And that's a great thing to see. One very small suggestion I have would be to write down the learning outcomes at the start of your lesson. So if you use a handout, you can always include them on a handout. If you have them in a PowerPoint, you can include them in the PowerPoint. But in this case, since you were using the whiteboard a lot, I think it would have been great to have using some space off to the side, just write down the learning outcomes. That way they're just constantly serving as a reminder. If anyone kind of loses track, then they're right there. And it also allows you to kind of stay accountable for making sure that they're all completed. Although I do really appreciate that you reviewed them at the end. That's something that is not seen all the time, so it's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Great. So thank you so much, Charlie. I think you've gotten a lot of good feedback from everyone in this room that'll be useful to you. I also think your self-reflection at the beginning showed that you already are very self-aware of your teaching, the things that went well and the things that you would adjust if you were to teach this lesson again. I'm glad to see that you have that skill. That's a really important part of the fundamentals program. Most of my feedback will be saved for my report that I'll write, but I'll just give you a little bit now as well, mostly to just say this was really well done. The structure of your lesson was perfect. It had a very strong open, a very strong close, and then a good balance of lecture-based components and interactive components, which is exactly what we want to see. That keeps students engaged and it keeps their attention. I love the diversity of visual aids you used. I like that you interacted with the concept maps. You pointed to things on the board. You didn't just place them up there and let us see them. You actually interacted with them, which is really useful. You show us what we need to look at and take away from them. And then you use different visual aids ranging from a handout to the whiteboard as well. And it shows that we don't need to rely on PowerPoint to teach well. We can teach really effectively without PowerPoint, so that's wonderful. I have a really hard time of thinking of concrete things for you to improve on, especially in terms of your delivery skills. Your delivery skills are very well developed. One thing I would say, more from a content perspective, and as you continue to think about, for example, how you could teach this lesson better, is what would you do in the case that you were using a concept map in class and you didn't get through it? You didn't get all the content on it you wanted to. As you said, you didn't quite get all the content you were hoping to. How would you make sure that students still left with the information that you wanted them to have? And I think you probably would have that solution already in your head about what you would have done in the classroom setting. But when things like this happen in the classroom, you could just point out to the students what would be the solution when an activity runs a little bit long and there's a little bit of information left off. I don't doubt that you already have a solution to that.
That was going to be one of the things I was going to mention, but I ran out of time. But I was going to suggest as a TA that we might use it in tutorials to whatever class it might be, that's something students can develop and add on to throughout the term, and that a TA might mark as a check-in assignment 1, and then a month later look at it and see how students have added on to it. And I think as a TA, it also helps you see how they think and where they don't know stuff that you might need to focus your next lesson on. But I didn't get a chance to say it, but I'll say it now so at least you guys know.
No, good. And that's exactly what we want to see, that you have those solutions. So when this happens in class next week or down the road, you know exactly what you're going to do to deal with running out of a bit of time and how you're going to make sure students still get the knowledge they need. So overall, very well done. That was a model example of a third micro-teaching session and how to teach about a teaching method using that method itself. So thank you very much.